Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota, as we're taking a look at Alabama football, mostly on the show, but we know it's opening day for college basketball across the country, and that includes here in Tuscaloosa with women's and men's games coming up. But it's a great time to kick off our week of coverage here on the network with Crimson Drive, again, driven to you by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Make sure you check them out online at TuscaloosaToyota.com. Here in this first segment, we always go through the headlines that are presented by our friends at RJ Young. They are the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive, and they furnished us with this smart board to go through all of the different headlines across Alabama athletics. And we'll start, first of all, with a look at what's coming up on the show today. First things first, we'll take you back to Bryant-Denny Stadium to our booth cam presented by Royal Furniture. Take a look at the highlights from the LSU win. Then we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, with coach's checklist for Monday as Alabama starts this week of preparation for the New Mexico State game on Saturday. Then we'll be visiting with one of our honorary captains for Saturday, Wesley Britt, a great offensive lineman and All-American at the University of Alabama in the early 2000s. He'll be along to share some memories of his Crimson Tide playing career, plus what he's up to now. And then we'll have Taylor Zarzour along for the big picture as we take a national view of Crimson Tide football. Taylor will be the play-by-play announcer for the SEC Network coming up for Saturday's game against New Mexico State. Other headlines with the Crimson Tide football team. Saturday, a win against LSU. 20-14 was the final score as the defense really stood tall in the final drive that LSU had right at the end of the game to get that victory. And leading the charge, Will Anderson Jr., no surprise, SEC Defensive Player of the Week. He's putting together just a tremendous season in only his sophomore year in Tuscaloosa. We know this Saturday, 11 a.m. start time for the Crimson Tide against the New Mexico State Aggies, and that means our coverage on the radio will start at 8 a.m. You can wake up and listen to the crew as we start getting you ready for Crimson Tide football against New Mexico State at 11 a.m. We'll also be having an a.m. start time on the radio next week, but it's a little later, 11:30 a.m. our radio airtime for the Arkansas game, and that'll be televised on CBS starting at 2:30. And we learned that news yesterday. Alabama against Arkansas, final home game of the year, Senior Day, coming up next week. But this week it is New Mexico State, the opponent for the Crimson Tide. Tonight, again, basketball. We are so excited for the basketball season is here. Opening night across the country for college basketball. Women's basketball team, they'll be facing Charleston Southern at 5 p.m. We'll have radio coverage available for you of that game. And don't forget, if you missed it last week, or a couple weeks ago actually, we had Christy Curry on to give us a really detailed scouting report of her team. You can also find that on the Alabama Insider podcast. Same could be said for the men's basketball team, with Brian Hodgson giving us a scouting report on last Thursday's edition of Crimson Drive. That's also on our Alabama Insider podcast. Hodgson and the men's team will be taking on Louisiana Tech at 8 p.m., and we're really excited to see Alabama's third year under Nate Oates hit the floor coming up tonight, along with the women's basketball team, as Coach Curry is now in her 9th season here in Tuscaloosa. And Friday, before the basketball game the next morning, make sure you're around for South Dakota State coming to town. That's already, Joe Lunardi has been doing some bracketology, and right now he has Alabama as a 4 seed. Their first round matchup would be against South Dakota State, a number 13 seed. So it's crazy these teams are meeting already this early in the season, and great to see that coming up this week. Two really talented opponents for the men's team, Louisiana Tech and South Dakota State. And then the women's team will also be playing on Sunday at 2 o'clock against the Tulane Green Wave. Some other headlines across Alabama athletics. Everybody across Alabama athletics yesterday was thrilled to see the news that the soccer team is headed back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 2017. All those wins, especially at home, paid off for the Crimson Tide against LSU, against Auburn. We knew Alabama had a really strong RPI, and the committee choosing them for the 2021 NCAA tournament. Have to go on the road to take on a very talented Clemson team. Alabama Clemson in the postseason. I think we get this a lot, whether it's football, softball. Now you can add soccer to the list, as it will be Alabama against Clemson, 3 p.m. on Friday. Make sure you head to RollTide.com for the latest on Alabama's run in the NCAA tournament. Volleyball team hosted Arkansas, had 2 really hard-fought matches. Arkansas won both of them in 4 sets on Saturday and Sunday. No matches coming up this week for the Crimson Tide volleyball team, but next they will be facing Tennessee next Thursday and Friday coming up in Knoxville. But as we get going on this show today, we'll have our booth cam highlights from the LSU game, as you can take a look, an inside look at Alabama's 8th win of the season from inside the broadcast booth. And don't forget, the booth cam is live and going for each and every game here on our Facebook page presented by Royal Furniture. Here are the booth cam highlights against LSU.
We welcome you inside Bryant-Denny Stadium just in time to enjoy the roar of the crowd as the Alabama Crimson Tide and the LSU Tigers come streaming out onto the field.
And like Rashad said earlier, it's production on first down is what's going to be probably the most important thing, because here missed the first down pass, second down again and not completed, now 3rd and 10. You kind of feel it in the building right now, like what's going on? Why are we doing this? LSU's shown blitzes in these situations. They're showing cover 0 again. So see what the defensive coordinator does on this play.
Here now a 3rd and 10 from their own 31. Bryce backpedals, stands in. Everybody's covered. He's going to roll to the right side, turns it upfield. He's got the first down, 40, and lunges forward down to the 43-yard line, and that's that intangible that Bryce brings. Everybody was covered. He still gets 12 yards on a bank first snap. Just like you said, did a great job of keeping his eyes on his man. That's how you get back in the rhythm. Make a good play, positive play, 2nd and 10. Let's add another one to it. Trey Palmer now checks in. He's wide to the right side, one of 2 men there until Brian Thomas vacates. He'll come to the right side of the line. Here's the give, and Will Anderson. Hello, Tyrion Davis Price slammed to the turf by the turf monster, Will Anderson.
Might want to block that guy. If I'm game planning against Alabama, I'm going to say, hey, if we're going to block anybody, it's going to be number 31.
Here now on the 2nd down play. Wide open left side. Roydell makes the grab out of the backfield, 40. Down the left sideline, 30. Stumbles as he cuts right and gets down to the 24-yard line. So from the 34 of LSU, going left to right as you listen, here's the 1st and 10. Bryce gets the football, throws a BB. It is caught. 20-yard line, breaking a tackle. First down, Alabama for Jamison Williams. The transfer from Ohio State picks up a big bank first down on a 20-yard gainer, Rashad.
Talk about makes you get north and south after the catch. Jamison Williams showed you exactly how it's done.
From the 2-yard line, 1st and goal from there.
But remember, Bryce, new center in there. Well, he's going to go to the shotgun right here, but you got to make sure you get that exchange.
Tommy Brown is in as teammates lost helmets on the last play. So Brown checks in. Here's the give. Robinson up the middle. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Alabama. Just powering in from 2 yards away.
I think the entire defense is playing good right now. A lot of energy. Dallas Turner coming out to rush the passer, but this is a big play right here for Alabama. You know, LSU's getting the ball in the second half. They won the toss in the 3rd.
They are 2 of 6 in 3rd down conversions. Davis Price to the left of his quarterback. Here's the snap. Good protection. Time to throw. Near side. Intercepted off a deflect by Alabama. Jalen Armour Davis. And Alabama with the 3rd interception of the year by Jalen Armour Davis. 3rd and goal from the 8-yard line. 53 seconds remaining in the half. 7-7 the score. Bama trying to take the lead late in the half. Here's the snap. Pressure off the edge. Here's the throw. Mechie open. Touchdown, Alabama. He cut away from Dwight McLaughlin coming to the near sideline. And despite the pressure coming in on Bryce Young, he hit the man in a pinpoint fashion. And Bama takes the lead. Here's the 1st and 10. LSU from their own 47-yard line. White jerseys, gold pants, purple numbers and trim, big handoff, big hole. Price gets out across and loses the ball at the 40-yard line, and Alabama recovers it. And Nick Saban is going to smile. Only the 3rd fumble recovery of the year for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So now a 2nd down and 10. Again, Bryce backpedals, has time, loads up, looks long. Jamison Williams got it behind the defense. He is gone. Touchdown, Alabama. 58 yards. And for the Crimson Tide, some breathing room. They lead 20-7 over the LSU Tigers. 20-14 Alabama. LSU one last chance here to throw it to the end zone. The Tide trying to hang on. with a 6-point lead. Here's the snap. Quarterback steps back. He's under pressure. Flag on the play. He'll throw into the end zone. It is knocked down. Incomplete. There is a flag on the play, however, as we said.
This might be on Alabama.
The center judge made the call.
Personal foul, face mask, offense, number 61. The penalty is declined. The game is over.
The game is over. The game is over. And if I had any hairs on my head that weren't already white, they would have already turned white here this evening.
Especially with the center judge, he was motioning towards our side of the ball like it was hands to the face or something for the defense. But Alabama knocks it down, ball game over, and what an effort from this defense coming up big. 2 stops on downs here in the fourth quarter, 3 right there if you count the end, and just, didn't have the firepower on offense. Only at the end of the game we had 6 total yards rushing. That's going to include the 22 sack yards. LSU was able to come away with 4 sacks, but defense standing up, and it's been kind of a struggle sometimes during this year. A&M was able to put up a bunch of points, but didn't have our fastball on offense, but defense played solid all night long.
Wow. Catch your breath, everybody. We're going to come back and recap this one. We've got our post-game awards and so much more. Alabama wins 20-14. Ed Orgeron falls to 1-8 as a head coach against the Alabama Crimson Tide.
And that was the booth cam highlights from Saturday as Alabama got a win against LSU. Remember, you can watch Eli, John Parker, Chris, Butch Owens, the spotter, Tom Stipe, our engineer in the background, even Ethan Carabin when he's back there producing Facebook. You can watch those guys as the game happens each and every week in our booth cam on our Facebook page. Presented to you by Royal Furniture. A lot of fun, good reactions from that win against the LSU Tigers, and now we're starting to move forward for what Alabama has coming up this week in the final non-conference game of the regular season against the New Mexico State Aggies. And with that, we hear from the head coach Nick Saban as he met with the media yesterday, and we'll give you coach's checklist from his Monday press conference here in Tuscaloosa.
One of the things that I think is really important to note is, the way the players competed in the game. The defense made some huge stops at the end of that game that, were, paramount in us being able to win the game. Now you can make a great argument for the fact that because we didn't do other things well enough in the game, that the game had to come down to that. So there's obviously a lot of things that we need to fix. It didn't look like an Alabama team out there in some phases of our team. We struggled to run the ball, and we didn't pass protect very well. We didn't protect on third down. We didn't do as well on third down, which is something that has been really good for us all year long. And I think, we're all responsible for that. It starts with me. We need to get those things fixed. Every coach, every player, including myself, needs to put our players in a position where they have confidence that if they do their job, things are going to work and we're going to have a chance to be successful. So we all need to work hard on, trying to get it right, and we can't tolerate, any less than that. And I think that needs to be the focus for, this game this week is we need to improve as a team. We need to do things better on a more consistent basis, and not put ourselves in the positions that we found ourselves in last week. It's great that Will Anderson, SEC Player of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week, a guy had an outstanding game for us, and he's played extremely well all year, and certainly didn't disappoint anybody in this game. I think New Mexico State is a dangerous team because they're one of these teams that are going to pass the ball. They're one of the top 25 passing teams in the country. Quarterback's efficient. They got good skill guys. They've got a pretty good runner. They play a lot of pressure type stuff on defense, which we're going to have to do a good job of. But again, I think the focus needs to be on what we need to do individually and collectively as a group so that we get things right, moving into, this week. He does have a lateral ankle sprain. We don't know. He's day-to-day right now. I don't know what his status will be for this game. It just depends on how he progresses, through this week.
Coach's checklist, that last item, the Darian Dalcourt injury. We're going to continue to see how he progresses throughout the week and see if he's able to play coming up on Saturday, possibly Drew Sanders coming back as well. And Coach Saban will be meeting with the media again coming up on Wednesday night. We'll have Coach's checklist from his Wednesday press conference coming up for you on our next edition of Crimson Drive, and that will be coming up Thursday as Crimson Drive is driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. On our Tuesday editions, we always like talking with the legends of Alabama football, and this week, one of our two honorary captains, along with running back Kenneth Darby, is offensive lineman Wesley Britt, who played for the Crimson Tide from the year 2001 to 2004, had a really memorable career. He was all SEC and All-American. He won the Jacobs Award for one of the best outstanding linemen in the SEC. So Wesley Britt had a great career at Alabama, remains very busy to this day. I think you'll enjoy catching up with Wesley Britt, one of the great offensive linemen in Crimson Tide history. Wesley, roll Tide. It's great to see you. How's everything going?
Roll Tide, Roger. It's good to be here. Life is good. I'm excited about this upcoming weekend, getting back to God's country, seeing our fans, and being on the field. It's always a little different being on the field with no pads on, but it's always good to be in Bryant-Denny. It's an unbelievable place, and I'm just so blessed to be able to drape that Crimson jersey on my shoulder pads.
It's a kind of a full circle moment for you, because when you were playing at Alabama, I'm sure you saw players from the Bryant era coming back and getting recognized as honorary caps or having those championship teams be recognized. Now you're one of those guys that gets to come back, and the younger group of players gets to look up to you now.
Yeah, it really is. I do remember vividly having some of our greats, having Cornelius Bennett come back, having Joe Namath, Kenny Stabler, even Bart Starr a couple of times. It was an unbelievable to see the greats. Now, I'm not at those lists. I'm just an offensive lineman to have been be blessed to play. But hopefully I left the university in a better spot than whenever I came, and hopefully I added value. That's something we always strive to do, is leave things better than when we got there. And it's hard to improve upon the tradition like the University of Alabama, but hopefully I left a positive impact there.
Absolutely, you did. And let's take a look back at your career. Of course, from Coleman, Alabama. Did you grow up a big Bama fan, and was this always your dream to play for the Crimson Tide?
Oh, Roger, that is a very interesting question, because I actually, God has a great plan, and I actually grew up an Auburn fan. And I'll tell you that, Roger, but we're not. but in talking about God having a great plan, when I was going through the recruiting process, it was apparent that Alabama is such a special place, and the tradition, what it meant to the state of Alabama, to the South in general. I love the history. But about the second week in my senior year of high school, I get a call from the offensive line coach at Auburn at the time, and basically told me, he said, "Wesley, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you'll ever be good enough to play in the SEC, and definitely not good enough to play at Auburn. But we offered you, if you commit today, we'll take you. But otherwise, I think we need to go in a different direction." And I said, "Hey, if you feel that way, I think you're right. We do need to go in a different direction. So it's going to be Alabama or Florida." The next time I saw that offensive line coach, we were at the Atlanta Quarterback Club, and he was presenting the Chuck Jordan Award for the best offensive lineman in the ACC and the SEC, and I received that award. But he was very humble about it. But God has a great plan. My first day on campus, I met my wife, and everything that I went through on campus, the opportunities that I had to play in Bryant-Denny Stadium, to play with my teammates, the great people I got to play with, just great human beings and great football players. It was apparent. But it was, like I said, it was going to be Alabama or Florida. And what that came down to ultimately is my grandfather said, "Wesley, if you want to be Wesley Britt from the state of Florida, do business in Florida, raise your family in Florida, you need to go to Florida. But if you want to be Wesley Britt from the great state of Alabama, you need to go to the University of Alabama, because that's the best." And I went straight upstairs and called Dabo Sweeney, who was recruiting me, and told him I'd love to take him, love to accept his offer to play at the University of Alabama, and that's where I needed to be and wanted to be if they would still have me, and they fortunately left a spot open for me.
Certainly glad for that. And of course, you were blessed with great size, 6'8", 300 pounds. But what did you have to work on those early years to make yourself a consistent all SEC performer like you ultimately became?
Right. That's a good question, because it's nonstop. It's especially being an offensive lineman. It's blue collar, lunch pail. Every day when you wake up in the morning, you've got to go to work. Obviously, like you said, I was blessed being 6'8" and a little bit of athleticism and some and great size. But unless you're willing to put in the work, there's several big people out there, but the work is what gets you to the next level. It was Neil Callaway coming in my first year. Neil Callaway making me do the little things, getting out an hour before practice just to take the first steps and to work on my pass sets. And I had a lot of improvement to do. Back in, not so long ago, we did not learn a ton of technique in high school like they do now. There wasn't all these skills camps. It was you just go out and manhandle people. You just go out and beat them and knock them down and get up and do it again. Find a way to get it done. And it wasn't until I got to college where I was even taught technique at all. Really. And so that was something I had a steep learning curve, and that was that I was fortunate to be able to have a redshirt year, to be able to work on that, to improve my game, to retool my toolbox, and to sharpen the tools that I had, and to be able to add value. A lot of work.
A lot of work for sure. And of course, it led to a great career at Alabama that had one really notable moment, a moment that could have been devastating for you, getting injured against Tennessee in that ball game. But you were able to use your injury and a really tough time in your career into a positive for the entire fan base and all of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Just what can you tell us about that experience, from the injury to you getting carted off the field, putting your fist up in the air and firing up that crowd?
Yeah, so that's my first boss after football, when I started working for Alabama Power. He said, "Wesley, you're the only player I know who's famous for getting injured." And there's a little bit of truth to that, but I did. I remember after going down. It was early in the first quarter. Shad Williams running right off our back. Defensive lineman slanted inside the defensive end. Had a blitz and linebacker scraping off the edge. Dove at Shad Williams, who was running off my back, and missed Shad like most people did, and dove into the back of my legs. And I heard both bones snap, just felt them just like bam, bam, tibia and fibula. And honestly, laying on the ground, I knew instantaneously what had happened. But what came over me first was how blessed I was that God put me on a platform for a reason. And that to be able to play a child's game, to be able to pay for my education by playing football, a game that I love, and to be able, like I said, to wear the crimson jersey, to wear the white, that so many greats before me have been able to do. And for me to be a part of that, I was just overcome with blessing. I knew that if football was over, that God had something better for me. And that if it wasn't over, I knew I would do everything possible to get back into playing shape, to rehab, and to listen. And I knew there was a great plan. Then from that moment, I've always been taught, whatever you do it to the best of your ability, and always try to help the team. And I was always a preacher of that. As a leader on the team, I would talk to our teammates about, like, if you're standing on the sidelines, everybody has a role. You got to figure out how to help the team win. And if your role is on the sideline and you're not playing at the time, you find a way to be encouraging, to be there with the players, to do what you can to add value. And how could I preach that if not act that? So I knew I couldn't help on the field. Knew I couldn't line up beside Justin Smiley and Evan Mathis, Brody Cruel, but I knew I wanted to help. And the only thing I could even think of at the time to help was to energize the crowd and tell the team, "Hey, let's play. Don't worry about me. I'll be okay." Let's play football. Let's win this. Let's find a way to win the football game.
Was a really great moment in Alabama football history. And of course, you weren't the only Brits to play on the Crimson Tide football team. You had to be tremendously proud when Justin and Taylor also had a chance to suit up for Alabama.
Sure, Roger. How cool is that to play at the most tradition-rich football team in all of the world, and then two, to be able to do that with not one but two brothers on the same team playing the same game. Was just such a blessing, and something we'll never forget. That it's just an unbelievable opportunity to be able to do that with my family, my brothers, who I was definitely a lot tougher and meaner because of them. And my mom unfortunately had to deal the brunt of most of that with us growing up. We were definitely rambunctious boys, but my two older sisters, they were the meanest. But we were very. That was a really neat thing, something that I am incredibly proud of.
Well, once again, your family is in the spotlight. You're making the trip to Tuscaloosa coming up this weekend, but I know you've been traveling all across the state with your wife, Katie Britt, who's running for Senate, U.S. Senate from the state of Alabama. You just got to be tremendously proud of her. Not to get too political on this football show, but again, she's doing some important work, and I know you guys have really enjoyed your opportunity to go around the state.
Yes, thank you for asking about that, Roger. And that's why ultimately, I know my wife. Like I said, we met freshman orientation. She was very involved in everything at the University of Alabama, and God having a plan, preparing us for this moment. And there's 21 years of being best friends with Katie. There's nobody that I know that cares about Alabamians more, that cares about people, and whoever she's talking to at the time, whether it's the CEO or the janitor at the Galleria. They are the most important person in the world, and they're cared about equally in her eyes. And the fact is, she first cares, and then on top of that, she can get stuff done. I've seen her get so many to reach the results and reach outcomes time after time, and still not be able to figure out how she did it in hindsight, but it always works. Just grind and getting things done, and we need that. We're in a pivotal time in our country. And we've got to have good people who care and will work for the people to get something done. And that's why I quit my job. I quit my job to support that, to be with her on the campaign trail, because I know what she can do, and we love the state.
Well, last thing, we'll get you out of here on this. The Crimson Tide at 8-1 on the season, some big ball games still left to go. Just how are you feeling leading into these final pivotal matchups that are coming up in November as Alabama once again tries to get a championship?
One thing I know, Coach Saban one has great players. He recruits some of the best talent in the world to play at the University of Alabama. And then two, he finds a way to win games and coaches these guys up. We still have some opportunities, some areas we can improve upon. Communication, of course, me looking at the offensive line. Communication on the offensive line to make sure we have the Mike linebackers identified properly so that we can pick up blitzing linebackers, and some little technique issues that we're seeing that can still be improved upon. First steps, especially in the run game, gaining ground, but they're getting better and every day, and they've got the talent, and I look forward to seeing a great win this weekend, and then keep moving that on to New Mexico, Auburn, and Georgia, because that's going to be they have some animals up front. I mean, true freaks, but I look forward to seeing our guys improve and really show up and dominate the best defensive line in the country.
Certainly looking forward to that. And Wesley, we're looking forward to having you back in town along with Kenneth Darby. You guys are the honorary captains coming up for this Saturday against New Mexico State. Just thank you for joining us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and best of luck with everything you all have going on. Roll Tide. Thank you.
Roll Tide.
Great conversation with former Crimson Tide offensive lineman Wesley Britt. Again, he and former running back of Alabama, Kenneth Darby, will be the honorary captains coming up for this Saturday's game against New Mexico State. So make sure you're there to cheer them on at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Someone else that'll be at the stadium on Saturday, calling the game on television, will be a state of Alabama native, Taylor Zarzour. He'll be on the SEC Network call along with Matt Stinchcomb and Alyssa Lang, and he was able to drop by for this visit we call the big picture, when we take a national view of Alabama football. We visit with Taylor Zarzour, who's calling his first Alabama football game this season. It's Alabama against New Mexico State. Here's our conversation with Taylor. Taylor, it's great to see you. How's everything going?
Everything's great, Roger. Always excited to come back to my home state.
Yeah, what does it mean to you when you get to call an Alabama football game? You got to do that in recent years. You've been in our show with Hey Coach and the Nick Saban show. I know that always is a fun time for you.
Yeah, it is. I'm a proud Mobilian, and I'm the oldest of 6 children, 4 of which graduated from the University of Alabama. I didn't. I went to Huntingdon College in Montgomery, but my mother went to school there, and 4 siblings went to school there. So it's a big piece of who I am. And my spotter on Saturday will be my brother Matt, who graduated from the university. So it'll be great to have him there with me as well.
So with all those family connections, is there a big group text going on Saturdays? You're off somewhere else calling a game. They're filling you in the entire time about how Alabama's doing.
Absolutely. Yes. It's called the Whole Z Fam text chain. And let's just say last Saturday, they weren't too happy. It was a 20-14 win, but I was calling the Florida South Carolina game at the same time, which was maybe more shocking than what we saw in Tuscaloosa. But yes, they were definitely letting me know what was happening at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
I certainly can imagine. Well, for you, traveling around calling different college football games, where have you been the past few weeks? What have been some of the big storylines you've been keeping an eye on?
Well, yeah, I mean, Williams-Brice this past Saturday, to see that shocking result as South Carolina blew out the Florida Gators. Crazy to see the state of the Gators right now, who gave Alabama a whale of a game in the swamp earlier this season. They're 4-5 now, and just got rid of their defensive coordinator and their offensive line coach. So that was kind of crazy to see. A few weeks ago, we actually stepped out of the conference. There were only 4 SEC games. So they shipped us out to do the Houston SMU game. And SMU had this frantic comeback to tie the game at 37, and then kicked it to their kick returner, Marcus Jones, and he returned it 100 yards for a touchdown with just 30 seconds to go. So that was kind of wild to witness, and knocked SMU out of the top 25. We've seen Mississippi State. We were part of the broadcast with the viral candy message from Mike Leach a few weeks ago, as Alyssa Lang interviewed him on the field. Saw Texas A&M, as they have gotten it rolling since beating the Tide, have turned their season around. And as you know, Roger, still very much in the thick of the SEC West race. Alabama doesn't need to slip up. If they do, A&M could take advantage. So we've been all over the place in the last month or so.
And with that, I'm sure you're really impressed by the parity we've seen in this league. Obviously, the last game you called, South Carolina, Florida, but just anybody can beat anybody this year, it seems.
It really does. Georgia seems like they're a cut above the rest of college football. After that, everybody feels like they're so vulnerable. Even the other undefeated teams, Cincinnati barely winning in recent weeks against inferior American opponents. Oklahoma going to the wire against the bottom of the Big 12, like Oklahoma, and having to kick late last-second field goals at home against inferior opponents in order to win. It does. It feels like everybody else is ripe for a loss. And, while Georgia's had this dominant season, I still worry or wonder, I guess, for them about the quarterback spot. Stetson Bennett still seems prone to make a mistake in the passing game. We saw that in the second half of the game in Bryant-Denny Stadium last year when Alabama came back and beat the Dogs. And I wonder if these two line up again and play each other in Atlanta in the SEC championship game with that incredible pass rush that we've seen on display from Alabama in recent weeks, with who I think is the best player maybe in all of college football, Will Anderson. If he gets to Stetson Bennett and frustrates him, I think that Georgia could make some mistakes in the passing game too. So you're right. I think everybody is beatable in 2021.
They're getting ready to come to Tuscaloosa this Saturday for Alabama against New Mexico State. I know we still have a long way to go until the ball game, but what are some things that are on your mind first and foremost for this broadcast coming up as you look at the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think that all Alabama fans are wondering if they're going to get back to being able to push the defensive front around. The offensive line has been in a state of flux, it seems, at parts this year. Certainly with the injury last week, having to shuffle offensive linemen around was an issue, but Bryce Young took way too many hits, I think, for Alabama's liking in that game. That guy, to me, is, as a Heisman voter, he is at the beginning of my mind as somebody that should be thought of that could win that award. and him being as valuable as he is to Alabama's offense, you don't want him taking the kind of shots that he took against LSU this past Saturday. And the fact that Brian Robinson in the ground game never got going against LSU. I realize LSU played a great game on Saturday night. Really surprising to see, a jet sweep or a quarterback run be the longest runs Alabama had on Saturday night. Robinson had, I think, 1 9-yard run that got called back due to a holding penalty. He didn't have anything of real significance in that game. So I think that more than anything, you would like to see Alabama effectively push the New Mexico State front on Saturday and get that ground game going. And then on the other side, I think just there's a little bit of sloppiness with penalties for Alabama in this last game against LSU. I think a cleaner game is something I'm sure Nick Saban would love to see.
You mentioned head coach Nick Saban. Said before you've been on Hey Coach, the Nick Saban show before. You've got to interact with him there, but also on the Friday meeting, getting ready for a football game. Just what do you enjoy about when you, Matt, and Alyssa get to sit down with Coach and pick his brain for a little bit?
He is the best person to talk ball with in the world. For all of the talk about what Coach Saban is like, he is so passionate about his job. And, I do a lot of golf work, Roger, for Sirius XM, as you can see with my background here, as I help oversee our PGA Tour radio channel. And I know Coach Saban's an avid golfer and loves the sport. The only 2 people I've ever come across in all of sports that are as passionate talking about their craft or I guess the only other person other than Coach Saban would be Tiger Woods. Those 2 love what they do and are so passionate about the details of what they do. And so when we get in those Friday meetings with Coach Saban, Matt Stinchcomb, my analyst who does such a terrific job for us, he loves talking ball. And Coach Saban can't wait to talk ball with Stinch. And I learned just as much listening to Stinch ask questions to Coach Saban as I do sometimes from Coach Saban's answers. But that's more than anything. I think it's the best prep work you could ever do is being in a room with him and listening to him discuss what he thinks is most important to prepare for each week's opponent. So I really look forward to those meetings, and I'm excited about 11:30 on Friday.
No doubt. And sticking with golf for a moment, what do you make of the year that Justin Thomas had? Obviously, there are a lot of Alabama alums doing well on the PGA Tour, but Justin's really leading the charge and helped lead Team USA to a big win at the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, he's really hard on himself, a lot like Coach Saban. I know they're friends. He gave himself a C minus grade for his performance in 2021. I'd give him a little bit better grade than that. He won the Players' Championship. So while he didn't have as consistent of a season as I know he would have liked, he still won one of the premier events in all of golf. He's taken this line from Coach Saban after he wins a tournament. He calls it the 24-hour rule, where he can celebrate a victory and then move on and get ready for the next one. So many people, Roger, are impacted by all the millions of dollars they're making in professional sports these days. Justin isn't. Justin is so committed to being the best player in the world. And he does it for the love of the game. He has this borderline obsession with being the best. And like many others, I'm bullish on JT having a massive 2022. I think it could include a major championship and could include him being the player of the year again. He just recently hired Jim Bones Mackay, who used to be Phil Mickelson's caddy, to be his caddy. I think that Justin is about to have maybe the best days of his career in front of him.
We really look forward to that. And again, we're looking forward to Alabama against New Mexico State. Anything fun else planned for the broadcast? We know Alyssa Lang on the sidelines always has something up her sleeve.
Yeah, she does. We're going to have some fun, obviously, talking about some of the things you and I talked about with improved offensive line play. We're going to have a chance to dive deeper into what makes Will one of the best players in the world. We're going to talk at length about him and just about his performance, not only against LSU, but just what's turned him into quite possibly the best defensive player in all of college football. And I've got two other really fun things for you, Roger. One is, we do this segment each week on our broadcast called Eat Like a Champion. I'm not going to reveal where we're going yet, but make no mistake, it'll be a place that all Alabama fans are familiar with that will be saluting during the broadcast. And the final thing we're going to do, and this is really important to me as a proud Alabamian, as you know, Alabama fans love all University of Alabama sports. Outside of this footprint, people think, oh, they just care about football and they don't care about anything else. And nothing could be further from the truth. So we're going to salute 3 different terrific Alabama athletic programs during the broadcast on Saturday. And I think people will really get a kick out of that.
Looking forward to it. Alabama against New Mexico State. Again, we'll have the radio coverage, but Taylor Zarzour, Matt Stinchcomb, and Alyssa Lang will have you covered on television on the SEC Network. Taylor, just thank you so much for joining us. Safe travels, Tuscaloosa. Look forward to seeing you later in the week. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate it.
Taylor Zarzour of the SEC Network. Again, he, Matt Stinchcomb, Alyssa Lang on the call on the SEC Network coming up Saturday for Alabama against New Mexico State. We'll have the radio call, of course, starting at 8 a.m. Our pregame coverage gearing you up right to kickoff coming up at 11 a.m. for Alabama's final non-conference game of the year. This is going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota, but we are not done on the Crimson Tide Sports Network at all today. We're just really getting started, as today is opening night in college basketball. We'll have the women's game coming up at 5 o'clock, the men's game coming up at 8 p.m. as Alabama in the women's game will face Charleston Southern. We'll have the radio call for that, and then coming up starting at 7 o'clock, our radio coverage will begin of Alabama men's basketball against Louisiana Tech with tip-off at 8 p.m. from inside Coleman Coliseum. So we certainly hope you can get there. We hope you can be there at 7:40 at least to be in your seats for the memorial they will have for Cameron Luke Ratliff. We're looking forward to that, honoring our late friend Fluff, who appeared on this program back in March talking Alabama basketball. So we'll have that coming up. We'll have the first game again coming up tonight, Alabama against Louisiana Tech on the men's side, women's team against Charleston Southern. Certainly an exciting day coming up as we have a basketball doubleheader. And then coming up tomorrow on the network, we will have our next edition of Greg Byrne Live, my monthly conversation with Director of Athletics, Greg Byrne. And if you missed that tomorrow, we'll have that as well. Coming up on Thursday's Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota, as we'll have a Hey Coach preview with Eli Gold. Adam Young, the broadcaster in New Mexico State, will be along as well to keep getting you ready for Alabama against New Mexico State. Special thanks to Wesley Britt as well as Taylor Zarzour for joining us today. Thanks as well to our Facebook Live producer Ethan Carabin putting this show together, and thanks to all of you for watching. Now let's enjoy a little bit of basketball as the season starts for the Crimson Tide later this evening. This has been Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching and Roll Tide.